jury members, judges, ma'am and my fellow classmates present over here. We are here to recite the facts of the case Merritt vs. Merritt. So Merritt vs. Merritt 1970 is an English contract law case where it creates an matter on legal relations. The principles laid in
No!
versus bad
No!
where domestic agreements
No!
Here I am to recite the case Merritt vs. Merritt. Mr. Merritt and his wife jointly owned the house and Mr. Merritt left his wife to live with another woman. So they made an agreement signed in which Mr. Merritt had agreed to transfer 40 pounds monthly to Mrs. Merritt and eventually transfer the house to her if she kept her mortgage paid in. When the mortgage was paid, Mr. Merritt refused to transfer the house.
Your Honor and esteemed members of the court, today we stand before you to present the case of Merritt vs. Merritt. So Mrs. Sarah Merritt and Mr. John Merritt had contracted to transfer the matrimonial house solely into the name of Mrs. Sarah Merritt, which Mr. John Merritt has paid to do so.
Objection, Your Honor. The agreement created between Mr. Merritt and Mrs. Merritt does not intend to create a legal relation between them. It was a domestic arrangement. Therefore, I put the facts before the court that domestic agreements are not legally enforceable.
I stand against these statements, Your Honor, as Mrs. Sarah Merritt and Mr. John Merritt were separated while signing the contract. This gives a room to assume that the contract was more than a domestic arrangement.
I stand against this, Your Honor. As such family arrangements made in reference with similar cases such as Balfour vs. Balfour, the wife could not sue it. This promise was made in the spirit of love and trust, which is confined within the marriage.
Your Honor, I seek permission from the court to question the defendant.
Objection granted.
Do you swear
I swear
to tell the truth,
to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing
and nothing
but the truth?
but the truth.
So, how many years did you and Mrs. Sarah Merritt been happily living together as a couple?
Almost for 25 years.
When did you move out of the house?
In the year 1966,
And why did you move out of your matrimonial house?
I developed an attachment with another woman, and me and Mrs. Merritt agreed upon getting separated, and I also offered her 40 pounds every month for the maintenance and the expense.
Your Honor, the case of Balfour versus Balfour does not have any application here because the parties in the Balfour versus Balfour were separated while forming the contract. It is not the case when the parties are, parties were living together in the case of Balfour versus Balfour. But this is not the same case in the case of Merritt versus Merritt, as the parties were separated. When the parties are about to separate, it is intended that they do create a legal intention to sue the other party. They do not rely on honorable understandings as they want everything cut and clean. So, as it is evident from the defendant's statements that the Merritts were separated while signing the contract.
Your Honor, there is no proof that Mr. Merritt and Mrs. Merritt were separated during the course of the contract.
Your Honor, I seek permission from the court to question the witness of the case. Do you swear
I swear
to tell the truth,
to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing
and nothing
but the truth?
but the truth.
Please introduce yourself for the court to hear.
Your Honor, I am 20 years old, eldest daughter of Sister Mrs. Merritt.
Have you witnessed any disputes between Mrs. Sarah Merritt and Mr. John Merritt over the past few years?
Yes, I have witnessed few fights.
Do you suppose know the reason for the disputes between them?
I suppose there was an involvement of other lady wherein my dad and she was in relationship. So because of that, my father and mother had to get separated, and my father had to walk out of the house.
Thank you for the confession.
Your Honor, I would like to defend my client by stating the fact that this agreement is uncertain. I will seek permission to the jury members to question my claim.
Granted.
Do you swear
I swear
to tell the truth,
to
The whole truth
the whole
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
How much pounds did Mr. Merritt agree to pay you?
Mr. Merritt have agreed to pay 40 pounds per
Okay. Apart from the consideration, what do you do for?
go to work and earn a net of 7 pounds per week.
So, did you agree to pay the mortgage loan of the house?
Yes, in return of the transfer of house ownership in my name,
Your Honor, it is clearly evident thus that this agreement is uncertain because he was made to pay a $40 monthly maintenance.
Do you
And
have
there
any
was-
proof to support it?
My client, Mr. Merritt, has paid $40, and Mrs. Merritt has accepted that she has received $40 of monthly maintenance. And there was no consideration for this agreement. This is obviously untenable.
That point is no good, Johanna, as I agree that Mr. Merritt had paid 40 pounds to Mrs. Sarah Merritt, but even though if she had used to pay the consideration for clearing the mortgage from the building society, still her act in paying the mortgage loan was a good consideration.
I disagree with this, Your Honor. Under Section 17 of the Married Women's Property Act 1882, this house should be owned by both the husband and the wife. Even if the house has to be transferred to the wife, it has to be possessed by both of the husband and wife jointly.
Your Honor, I would like to present the evidence for the case of the agreement between Mrs. Sarah Merritt and Mr. John Merritt. Your Honor, the paper which the husband signed dealt with the beneficial ownership of Mr. John Merritt to Mrs. Sarah Merritt, which Mr. John Merritt has failed to do so. So I request the court to grant Mrs. Sarah Merritt the claim which she deserves, and we declare for your verdict of guilty.
Your Honor, members of jury, the prosecution has the greatest proof while we do not dispute the existence of an agreement. We argue that it was a domestic agreement and it is not legally enforceable. Furthermore, no written agreement exists. Therefore, we urge the court to dismiss Mrs. Merritt's claim and declare a non-guilty verdict.
8 minutes are up. Please wrap up.
Thank you.
As Mr. Merritt and Mrs. Merritt have been separated, it is more than a domestic agreement. So there is an legal agreement existing between the both parties. And as far as consideration, the loan they paid for the mortgage is the consideration for the contract, and the judgment is given for the plaintiff. Thank you.
For yourself to prove yourself, that was very nice.
Thank you.
Good presence of mind that was. And